Hey guys, welcome back to Suburban Ranch. So today we're working on our 1990 GMC K1500 and we're going to be replacing the gas tank. And so you might be asking yourself, why would I ever need to replace the gas tank? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Maybe it's rusted out, or maybe it's full of junk from sitting for a long time, or maybe when you were installing it, you over-tightened the straps and completely crushed it. So yeah, I did that. Watch this video, learn how to install it correctly. So to start this project, you'll have to remove the bed of your truck. Obviously, we've already removed the bed of the truck. We have a video on that entire process. We'll link that below. Now that the bed's removed, the first step here will be to remove the breather and the filler hose. So we'll use a 5/16 inch nut driver. And loosen these two hose clamps. There is also a ground strap attached to this filler pipe. We removed that when we removed the bed, so if you watch that video, you'll see where that attaches. So with those two loose, we should be able to pull both of these hoses off of the gas tank. There we go. Next up, we'll unplug the wiring harness here. There's a little tab that you'll lift up on. Oh, came off of its clip there. That's okay, we'll put that back together. There we go. So that's unplugged. And then we'll remove this ground wire and the clip for this wiring harness as well. So that's a little 13mm socket. And then this reattaches on the bottom here. Kind of slides into that channel right there. There we go. All right, so next up, we'll disconnect these three lines. Okay, so I'll start by removing this center line to give us a little bit more room to work on the other lines here. This one's held on just with a hose clamp. So we'll loosen that up. There we go. So next up, we'll remove these lines. So I'll use a 3/4 inch wrench to hold the truck side, and then a 5/8 inch line wrench to loosen the fuel pump side. And you may have a little bit of fuel pressure in here. We actually have not run the truck since reinstalling the tank, so these lines have all been bled out at this point. So there we go. All the lines on the top side of the tank have been disconnected. So we'll go underneath and loosen the straps, and we should be able to drop the tank. We've already siphoned the gas out of the tank, so it should be pretty light and easy to handle. Here we are under the truck. We've got the tank supported on a jack. We'll start removing the tank by removing this rear strap with a 15mm socket. Okay, with the rear strap loosened, I'm gonna go ahead and bend it out of the way so that it won't be in our way at all as we drop this tank down. So that should be out of the way enough. So with the rear strap removed, the next step is to remove the front tank strap. The front tank strap is actually connected to a bracket that bolts to the frame. So we're gonna remove all of that as an assembly. So we have 4 bolts that hold that bracket to the frame. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll go ahead and remove each of these bolts. Again, the tank is supported. Once we remove these 4 bolts, we should be able to slide the entire tank out. All right, so with the tank out of the truck, we're gonna remove the fuel pump so that we can transfer it to the new tank. So to remove the fuel pump, there is a lock ring here. And interestingly, it appears that this was not installed correctly by the previous owner. So you can see these little divots here in the lock ring. There's one here, there's one here on the back side that you probably can't see, and then there's one here kind of under the fuel lines that you probably can't see. But if we look at this divot here, this should be underneath this part of the tank. So that's really what locks this lock ring in place. And it looks like they didn't get it rotated far enough to get the lock ring locked in place. So when we reinstall this, we'll do it correctly, but I just kind of wanted to point that out to you guys. So in order to remove the fuel pump, we need to rotate this lock ring counterclockwise. So I'm going to use a little plastic pry bar and a little brass and plastic hammer to just tap this lock ring counterclockwise, and it should just come right off, especially since it's not really engaged. Oop, that's the wrong part. There we go. So that was a bit easier than it should have been. So now you can see that lock ring is out. So next up, we should be able to lift the fuel pump right out of the tank. We did siphon the fuel out, but there's still a little bit of fuel in there. So we'll just be careful here. We've got the sending unit. So there is a look at the fuel pump, and again, this was working just fine, no problems. That's the sending unit to show you how much gas that you have. And this is a little fuel filter sock here on the bottom. Everything looks okay. We've got a little rubber hose there. This unit's actually pretty new. I don't see any problems with it. So we'll just go ahead and reinstall this in the new tank. All right, so here's a look at our new tank. The first thing we'll do is install a new O-ring. So it just sits here right at the top of the tank opening, and that'll be sandwiched between our pump and the tank. And now we'll install our pump. So we have to feed this back into the opening here. There we go. We've got a couple of alignment tabs here on the tank, so I should try to pull this lock ring out of the way, but you've got an alignment tab here that fits into the tank, and an alignment tab on the back that also fits into the tank, and those are part of the pump, so that makes sure you have the tank in the right orientation. This is also a new lock ring. This came with the new tank along with the new O-ring. So now we need to just rotate this lock ring until it drops down, so right there. And then we should be able to start sliding it under. If you can see right here, we can slide it underneath these tabs, and that's what will provide the compression to seal up this tank or this pump to the tank. There we go. So I got it started. Let me get my hammer and my little plastic pry bar and see if I can drive it around a little bit. So we're making some progress. We want to get this divot here all the way over to that part of the tank. So that's already nice and tight. Our orientation pieces are in the right spot, so we'll keep going. So now that we've got the fuel pump installed into the tank, I just wanted to point out those tabs again so you can see that this tab on the lock ring is up against the stop here on the tank. So that is fully engaged and that is installed correctly. We can also see just, if you peer down in these cracks, you're not gonna be able to see it on camera, but if you peer down in these cracks here, you're gonna see just the edge of that O-ring as well. So everything looks sealed up well. All right, so the next step is to get this front strap off of the old tank. So we've got it tipped up here on its end. We'll use a 14mm deep well socket to loosen this strap. All right, so there is a look at the entire bracket and the strap. And then this truck also has a kind of a plastic guard here that goes on the bottom of the tank. So we'll clean that up and transfer that over to the new tank as well. One of the last steps on the tank here is to install some new tank pads. So these are GM tank pads. We'll link the part number in the description below, but they're just self-adhesive. So I'll peel the backing off here and we'll just stick it on top of the tank. There we go. And we'll do the same thing on the other end. Okay, so we've reinstalled this bracket and strap onto the new tank, and I've left it pretty loose here so that we can manipulate the tank as we put it back into the truck. So now that we've got the pump installed, this bracket and the strap installed along with this plastic shield, it's ready to go back into the truck. All right, so this new tank is completely empty, so it's pretty light. I've got our cameraman Adam here. We're just gonna lift it up and get the bolts started on the rear strap and on this side bracket. We're not gonna use the jack, it's a little bit cumbersome. Being so light and two of us here, it shouldn't be any problem to get this tank back up in the truck. So we'll do that right now. All right, so we've got all the bolts started. So now we'll go ahead and snug up this front bracket and then we'll tighten the straps, and I'll be really careful this time not to make the same mistake and over tighten them and crush our new tank. So the tank is up here, we've got the bolts snugged up, and so now this is the big question. How much do we tighten the straps? The manual says 33 foot-pounds. I can tell you that's too much. If you go at these straps with 33 foot-pounds, you're gonna crush the tank. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my ratchet, I'm gonna get it on the bolt, I'm gonna choke up on the ratchet, just watching the strap here, making sure it's making contact all the way around. Right there, it's getting pretty firm. And I'm just gonna stop. Everything is really solid. I haven't crushed the tank, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the rear strap. So I'll come in after I fill the tank and drive it around a little bit and just check these straps to make sure nothing's loose, but I think this is the much better way to go about this. Last but not least, we'll tighten up the bracket that holds that front strap. All right, so now that we've got the tank reinstalled, it's time to reconnect the lines. It's a good idea to mark these lines when you remove them so you remember how to reconnect them when you go to reassemble the fuel tank. Next up, we'll reconnect the breather hose. There we go, so that's the two fuel lines. So you have your supply line, your return line, and your breather hose connected. Now that the fuel lines are reconnected, I'll go ahead and reconnect the wiring harness. And this bolts right on top of the frame rail, along with the ground wire. All right, so last but not least, we'll reconnect our filler tube and our vent hose. We actually got all new tubing for this reinstallation. We'll link the part numbers down below. So since this tubing is new, it'll probably be pretty tight to get back onto the fuel pump and onto the tank. There we go. And the last step is just to tighten up our hose clamps. All right, there we go. Fuel tank is reinstalled. All right guys, so that is the fuel tank reinstallation. The last step here is to add a little bit of fuel to the tank. Make sure you key on and off several times. Let the pump refill the lines before you try starting the truck. If you enjoyed this content, please do like and subscribe. If we get 150 comments on this video, we're gonna give away a Suburban Ranch sweatshirt because it's winter here in Iowa and it's getting a little bit cold in this garage and I need to order a sweatshirt anyway. So please comment below if you enjoyed as well.